with the NYPD to include justice-involved youth in the Girl Talk and Blue Chips mentorship programs. These programs are designed for young women and men who are brought together in a judgment-free zone to talk through problems, learn skills, and walk away with role models and a strong support system. This collaboration allowed DOP to leverage existing opportunities and make them available to our clients. One of my primary goals as commissioner is to curb gun violence and reduce recidivism. Using a combination of prevention and intervention, our probation officers work to restore an individual's connection with their community and peers and help them change their behavior, creating a pathway out of the criminal justice system. In accordance with these goals, we are focusing our resources on the people and communities where they need it the most. This philosophy is encompassed through the Neighborhood Opportunity Network NEON, a unique and trusted place-based approach that provides a range of services to high concentrations of people on probation and other community members in the 7 New York City neighborhoods historically impacted by the justice system: the South Bronx, Harlem, Jamaica, Bed-Stuy, Brownsville, East New York, and Northern Staten Island. Over 30% of our clients come from these 7 neighborhoods alone. Since its inception, the NEON model has had a tremendous success in terms of impactful engagement and providing services to local community. In partnership with the New York City Gun Violence Prevention Task Force and the New York City Human Resource Administration, the Department of Probation is launching NEON Expansion, an initiative to increase access to governmental benefits and provide more effective support. In addition, NEON Expansion will focus on creating employment opportunities as well. Our juvenile alternative to placement programs, ECHOES and AIM, actively monitor youth through regular home visits and wellness checks with parents and guardians. They diligently work one-on-one with youth to underscore the detrimental effects of gun violence on persons, families, and communities. This is in addition to the many other programs that hold violence prevention groups and discussions for our city's youth. Internally, DOP has also initiated a specialized gun branch with the Department of Probation Adult Operations to combat gun violence. This branch is made up of 58 probation officers and 10 supervising probation officers who specifically supervise individuals sentenced to probation with a gun charge. This process will allow our officers to create strong engagement through dialogue and trust and identify the needs of these particular individuals, which in turn will reduce further gun violence and help shift their path toward a law-abiding future. We are also relying heavily on the work of our intelligence division to get guns off our streets and out of our communities. Over the past year, Intel conducted 10,918 field visits and 2,089 enforcement actions. This has been a 30% increase from the 7,955 field visits and 1,463 enforcement actions in calendar year 2022. These enforcement actions, including gang-related investigations, failure to report, home visits, and bench warrant enforcement actions, and transporting prisoners to and from other jurisdictions. Our intelligence division does great work, and we discovered over the last year that over 20,000 individuals have an active warrant for a violation of probation. In effort to locate these individuals, our intelligence division partnered with the NYPD and their ability to use their domain awareness computer system to conduct warrant enforcement and to return these individuals to court. Moreover, enforcement actions often result in the recovery of numerous firearms, drugs, and other contraband. In calendar year 2023, Intel recovered 24 firearms while conducting field visits, also an increase from calendar year 22, where they recovered 20 firearms. Some of the most common reasons for recidivism include a lack of employment or economic opportunity. This is why DOP is offering new programs for individuals to obtain their commercial driver's license within our NEON's location. This program offers an opportunity for clients and their community to obtain a license in order to seek permanent employment. We are also looking into introducing entrepreneurial programs such as beautician and barber certifications in the near future. These programs will benefit all of our clients, especially our undocumented clients who are unable to participate in the current employment programs. In an effort to assist clients in finding employment, we have also partnered with the Department of Transportation to hire justice-involved individuals to work at DOT sites to assist in managing vehicular, bicycle, or pedestrian traffic. While appreciative of the assistance third parties offer to engage our clients in employment, DOP is becoming more proactive in establishing economic opportunities for individuals before the completion of their probation sentence. In the same spirit, DOP will be requiring clients to participate in an exit interview a few months prior to leaving probation supervision to ensure each individual has established their basic fundamental needs, such as employment, housing, education, proof of identification, the ability to obtain food, access to formal banking, and access to proper clothing and furniture needs. Lastly, I would like to touch on one of the most vulnerable populations within our city, individuals who are homeless. Our probation officers are dedicated to working with individuals to overcome barriers and seek permanent housing. However, we recognize a gap in services and have engaged in constructive conversation with organizations and agencies such as DHS, Covenant House, and DYCD to explore options available to individuals who are homeless or living in shelters. We look forward to sharing more information about additional programs and benefits for our unhoused population with Council once they are more established. The work that this department engages in is not only impactful, it is also life-saving. This is attributed to the unwavering commitment of our probation officers to meet the needs of our clients and their families. Our work, however, is far from done, and there is more that each member of this agency can do to assist some of the fellow New Yorkers and improve the quality of the services provided. We look forward to working with Council on the path towards increasing the effectiveness and efficiencies of probation and, in turn, improving public safety and reducing recidivism. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner. I also want to recognize Council Members Shahana Hanif and Shauna Abreu who have joined us. Thank you. Okay, so I want to start questions with the Arches program and the reestimation. This plan reflects a savings of $600,000 in FY24 and FY25 due to the reestimation of the Arches program. The DOP stated that these cuts were made due to underutilization of some of these services. Can you please state which services were underutilized and how many participants attended the Arches program in the last year?
So I'll speak about Arches overall. When I took office and came in, Arches was a program that originally was 5 days a week. I was briefed about the Arches program being scaled down to 3 days a week when I went to do some visits at the Neon Center. And that was a result of not necessarily referrals, but lack of participation, which led me to say, okay, what is being offered there? We need to take a look at it, or who's delivering the particular mentorship? Let's take a look at it. So I will defer to the Deputy Commissioner of Adult Operations in order to get the number of individuals that are in attendance. Or, I'm sorry, Deputy Commissioner Robert Maldonado.
Hi. Thank you for the question.
You got to turn it on.
Okay. Thank you for the question. In calendar year 2023, we had a total of 381 participants. New enrollees, meaning that were in the actual calendar year, not brought over from 2022, was 275.
And what was some of the reasons you found when you started looking into the program that there was an underutilization from your point of view?
Right. So we're naturally we have credible messengers, not necessarily credible messengers that were previously incarcerated, but are key stakeholders in the community. So as a result of such, Deputy Commissioner Sharon Goodwin from Probation, she oversees our adult operations, which the NEON falls under, have been conducting interviews to make sure that the message is standardized, that they are engaging. We are currently down 7 credible messengers, so those positions have been posted. Naturally, we were at a point where we were met with a hire freeze, neither here nor there. We still had individuals to provide the services that were needed when individuals were attending. What I did see, though, is a lack of compliance, which naturally I spoke about earlier, by our clients in attending these particular programs. So as a result of such, we have met with a vendor that I like called Street Smarts. It's used in the New York City Police Department. It's a We're in the process of purchasing 3 of these mechanisms that would be more engaging. It is customizable, so we can create scenarios, and that's how we reach our young people. So we really had to step up our game with what would entice them to come in and want to participate in the program. Long gone are the days sit here and just listen to what I have to say, you know, and sometimes they look at it like we're a parent just talking. So I think this program, putting this in place, I think is going to be very intriguing, and not just young people, but even adults are going to love to participate in this. And especially the mere fact that it's customizable, because we can give them options, and options is simply this. We create a scenario they might have been involved in, and the outcome are 2 options. And so now we say, what made you make this decision? It's very engaging, it's thought-provoking. So I think that's going to be phenomenal. We're currently meeting, Deputy Commissioner Maldonado is currently meeting with them, and we're in the process, and we do have the funds to purchase 3D systems.
And when do you expect that to come online?
I'm hoping in the next month. We've met. Okay.
We're actually meeting with them on March 18th. We're doing to figure out next steps as far as procurement. It may be within the next 30 to 60 days.
Okay, so the credible messengers that you were down a certain number, I think you said 7, that you were down. Is that going to continue forward, or you're completely transitioning to this other?
No, because the credible messengers are going to be trained in the usage
to do this. Okay.
Yes, they're going to be a big part of it as well.
Okay. And my understanding is these programs are often mandated as a condition of probation. So I'm a little bit unclear about how it's possible to have low utilization if they're mandated.
Right. So that was my question when I came in as well. And naturally, we don't want to hit young people with technical violations for not attending. But, you know, that's why I focus also on the educational component. You still have to be going to school, and you still have to make your visits with your probation officer. Yes, it is mandated. That was my perplexity. But also I know it has to be something that they're interested in. So moving forward, hopefully this will reduce some of that non-compliance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Regarding the impact program cancellation,
Yeah.
can you break down a little bit of the reasoning behind canceling the program and which specific service types will be affected?
Right. So coming in, the program that was canceled, when we tabled it, it was never used. As a matter of fact, Deputy Commissioner of Adult Operations wasn't aware of it. The Deputy Commissioner of Juvenile Operations wasn't aware of it. That was supposed to be designed or built out, I think, to touch the youth part. They didn't have any clients. They did have staffing that they put in place, but it never got off the ground up and running. So therefore, that particular vendor, I think we're in the process of paying them for administrative fees, $300,000, because they did kind of put some staffing in place, but however, they didn't have clients for the program, so it never got up and running. So that's what was brought to my attention. But in addition, the same vendor has an impact program currently that we use both for young people and adult. And Matt Granoff, you want to speak to that?
So you're saying
That's
the program had staffing, but who was, can you just kind of name who was delaying it? Was the administration delaying it, or was it the provider delaying it?
I think, I really don't know, because when I came in, it wasn't up and running. Was it DOP? The provider?
The provider.
Oh, the provider. the provider.
So you're saying the provider was delaying the
That's
program?
what that's what we were told,
Okay.
the provider. But they're still part of us, because we have the mobile, what is it called?
Adolescent therapy.
Adolescent therapy, that addresses juveniles and adults. This was some sort of expansion of what they, a proposed expansion of what was in place. And we can revisit it.
Okay.
Because I don't have a problem revisiting it, but at the time, they said that the provider was delaying it, so I didn't understand why it was that it was just,
We've heard the opposite, but so how many people does MAT serve versus what the impact program was scheduled to serve?
does what serve?
The MAT,
The mobile?
Mobile Adolescent, sorry, I'm still learning all the acronyms, Mobile
MAGRA.
Adolescent Portable Therapy Program. How many individuals does that program serve versus what impact was scheduled to serve?
I don't know about the impact number.
So there was,
But
I don't know if that program had a number scheduled to serve, the impact. I didn't see one.
So I believe in prior testimony, impact was scheduled to serve 175 youth, and the MAT program is scheduling is serving 36 youth, is what
Okay,
was
so they-
testified
yeah, because-
before.
All right, so 175, but I know that the mobile adolescents serve several, adult population and young people, so whoever calls is provided with the service. But that particular program that I was briefed on when I came in, the impact, I was told that the provider was delaying it and that it never got up and running. That's what I was briefed on.
Well, I guess in the follow-up, it'd be great to get the numbers and more clarity on what exactly were the reasons for the delays, if you know, because we were under the impression that it was your decision to delay the program.
No.
So if you're saying it's not, it would be great to hear what exactly transpired, because it seems like they were scheduled to really serve quite more people than the MAT program.
Okay.
And then one last question on impact. What kinds of analysis did the department conduct to determine whether programs with overlapping services are redundant?
Right, so no cost benefit analysis involved. I know originally when we looked at a program, Next Steps, that I had canceled, looking at that program, the reason it was canceled wasn't funding. It was the fact that there were no real key performance indicators. Even though it was scheduled to be canceled and it was canceled, I extended it. I met with all the vendors, I spoke with them, I asked for the evaluations, the support. Even some of them personally stated that they didn't put anyone in place that should have been in place, that they, you know, to evaluate the program. Moving forward, the majority of those vendors, with the exception of one, is still part of Department of Probation's programs. So what I did was, I made sure that with the changes that were put in, we met with all the providers. We spoke about what key performance indicators look like, successful outcomes, not just having 16 people attend, 20 people attend. It was a total, I think, of about 210 clients that they had. 40-something had went back to school. The remaining clients, some actually are part of programs that some of the vendors had in place, so they're part of that, and the remainders went to the arches because it was underutilized. I didn't want to lose any funding for it looking, you know, as though it's not used,
Right.
so we ended up plugging them into our arches program.
So when these folks are contracted in their RFPs, there's no description of indicators of what the success of their programs would be?
That's right.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing differently.
Okay, but-
That's what's being done
Yeah.
differently.
I guess I would say that doesn't seem like that would, if I was ever to reply to RFP, I'm pretty sure it would ask, how will you determine if your program is successful? So I would love to see those RFPs and if those providers in fact provided out like their metrics of success, because I can't imagine that folks who are you know, have organizations to work with justice impacted individuals aren't, you know, assessing their programs and aren't being able to articulate, this is why our program works, this is why we should continue.
And I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Even when I met with them, they said, you know, we're keeping people out of jail. I know in my previous profession, I kept a lot of kids out of jail. But my point is, with that particular program, when we looked at our RFPs, because I'm going to do my due diligence. I want to see the RFP, what does it state? It really had attendance. And so naturally on our receiving end, and this is Deputy Commissioner Maldonado, new position, created for programs and evaluation. On our receiving end, I believe it was inputted into DOP Connect. That's what you would see. And then you would see us, the previous administration, saying, get your numbers up. Maybe I got a different lens. I'm not saying anything's done wrong. I want to see young people successful. I don't want to see them again. I want to see them employed.
No,
The
I
undercredited individuals should have been identified to go to school, get them up to grade, remedial courses, tutoring would be
Yeah,
in place.
I understand. I agree. I know, we've had the conversation before this
Yes.
hearing. I know what your intentions are, but I think it would be, I personally would love in the follow-up if we could look at those contracts and really make a determination whether or not, in fact, there were additional metrics of success beyond just attendance. I personally find that very hard to believe. I want to move on. I just have a few more questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to the committee. I want to recognize Councilmember Ressler has joined us. One of the things, stepping into this role, when we talked to a lot of providers, there was a real concern about probation officer firearm possession.
Right.
We've heard reports that in your testimony that DOP employees in the probation officer civil service title series are now required to carry firearms. What improvements have you seen in the department specifically since implementing this policy?
Right, so I didn't implement the policy in 2003. The former Commissioner Horn mandated firearms. It is part of the notice of examination for the probation officer's position. There is a 5-day training firearm course that's part of their training. In order to qualify to get the job, you have to pass the firearm qualification. I didn't implement that. What I saw was probation officers doing visits, home visits on adult services operations, not having their firearms on them when it was mandated. So I reinforced that, especially when arrests are being made. It was really out of safety, being proactive, being on the offense, that this policy was put in place 20-something years before I took office. So I don't know how it was presented as though I mandated firearms.
I understand. Can you share any number of injuries or fatalities that have happened during these kinds of inspections over the last few years? I mean, you said this was mandated 20 years ago. It really hasn't been enforced. So it would be great to hear some data to back up the need to kind of reinforce that mandate.
Right. So I thought the same thing. The first thing I said was, how many probation officers have been injured? But the second thing I said, that's a good thing, because I don't think there's ever been a line of duty death with a probation officer. And me reinforcing the carrying of firearms coming into office, I believe that Horn had it in place for 20-somewhat years. In addition to that, it might have been loosely, maybe not enforced with the previous commissioner, but no, I don't. Probation officers, we do have some injuries, not life-threatening,
Okay.
I should say.
It would be great to get in the follow-up specific, what's like an injury report. What has been sustained injuries during these inspections over the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years.
5 years.
5 years
I'll do
would
a
be great
5-year
to get
look
an
back.
understanding.
Right.
And then are they required to carry firearms on all of their duties?
They're required to carry firearms. The decision.
I'm just on all day, are there times where it's not required? I understand
No,
you're saying
not
for
according-
inspections, but if they're sitting with someone in a community center, checking in, how's things going, how's things going at home?
They can cover their firearm. They have lock boxes to secure their firearm. If they want to make a more comfortable setting, they have the liberty to do that, if that's the question.
Okay. I know that, providers in organizations within the NEON network.
Right.
Have asked that officers not, wear uniform or carry firearms, and wondering if you all are considering that ask.
Well, the ask is, well, they can actually cover their firearm. A young person or an adult wouldn't even know that they have a firearm on. The uniform shirts are in place, always have been in place. I think it's important, especially when we think about the number of individuals we're supervising with gun charges, the guns that are being removed on home visits, but more importantly, they're the authority. It's not even for the reason to scare a kid. You're the authority. Individuals should know who the authority is, and that should be easily discerning. And God forbid, if it is something where an active shooter or something goes awry, people responding should know who's who. I think it makes it a lot easier. And it's not a full uniform.
Yeah.
They're wearing shirts, soft shirts.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like
Yeah, I
a
mean,
gun
I think a
belt or-
teenager would understand who's in charge there, with
I-
or without the polo shirt
I-
with the insignia, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can understand what you're
Okay.
saying. I have a question. Why hasn't Neon launched? It's our understanding that it had funding. Has an RFP been issued, or will one be issued?
You're talking about the expansion?
Yes.
So you want
Neon
to
Plus.
speak to that? Neon Plus.
We put out the RFP. We unfortunately did not get any responses back. We are now targeting vendors that we think would be able to provide the service that we're trying, the benefits service that we're looking for. But we haven't gotten any, we're still working through the process of getting it out to those vendors and getting responses back.
So it's live right now? The RFP is live?
The RFP is out.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been out. Is that the HRA we're talking
Yes.
about?
Okay, I'm going to open it up to council members who have questions for probation. Councilmember Narcisse?
For probation right now. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy that you're here, but most of my question is not for you. But one quick question I have, I think, how many New Yorkers who are on probation are securely housed? How many are homeless? What does services the department offer to get these folks properly housed?
So we have about, what's our number, 300 and?
How many?
300 that are currently, that have been identified as being homeless. With DHS and some third-party facilities that offer housing as well. One in particular is Doe Fund. We've had several meetings with them. I like them because they do have housing, and they also, when you're part of their housing, you can be part of their programs. And they have some real, what I like, significant programs such as welding, that they have some cohorts going on with that. So the 55 individuals, we're actually looking at where are they now. And even if they're in a shelter, we can transfer them to Doe Fund. Or if they show up at the address, if they show up at 33 Beaver for DHS, Doe Fund will actually come down, meet them, and have them transition. And they do have the availability in what's called their porterhouse, I believe, in Harlem, they stated. But more importantly, DHS is right in the building downstairs. We're working with them. So those 55 names we have, and we're meeting with the Deputy Commissioner of DHS regarding those individuals as well.
Okay, thank you. Governor Hochul has proposed closing 5 state correctional facilities in the next fiscal year, a plan that she says would save the state $77 million. Do you see any potential impact that the closing of these facilities will have on the Department of the Population at Rikers or the population at Rikers? Has the DOC been coordinating with the Department of Correction? Oh, no, that's not yours, sorry. So this one I want to answer. Do you see any potential impact?
Yes, so I do. And even with the commission that's being formed now, and I think hopefully we'll have the confirmation of the last 2 individuals that's going to be part of the conditional release commission. So even that we're planning for. So I'm going to need more people. So I stated this, I actually put in for PARs to hire bigger classes, because yes, I feel as a result of that, more people may be under community supervision. So we're forecasting for that. In addition to that, we're looking at real programs such as I spoke about the CDL, overwhelming attendance with that particular program. Naturally, they need a license, there's some fees. So we're trying to mitigate and work around some of those circumstances. Welding is another vendor that we're looking at that I think it would be huge. You don't need a high school diploma. You only need to know how to operate the machine. Hiring of more people will be needed for the Department of Probation, but we are definitely forecasting in the right direction that we're going to have a lot more people under community supervision. So,
Okay. According to the preliminary budget, the average compensation for a non-supervisory probation officer is approximately $50,000. Do you believe that the salary makes it difficult to retain and hire probation officers? Why and why not?
So I think the salary plays a big part on keeping them, maintaining our staffing numbers. The hiring, we do see people taking the exam, and they are eager. We just brought another class in, and they're currently being vetted for the position, and they were equally excited because the onboarding process has been made smaller, a lot smoother. But keeping them, the salary definitely has an effect on it. But I do believe, and I know this was stated, quoted by the mayor's communication person, that like the other 75% of unions that have contracts have been signed, that probation officers will see an increase in pay.
I hope so.
Yes.
What is the Department of Probation's role in addressing the city's rise in gun violence? How is your department working with other agencies to address gun violence? Did the preliminary plan include any additional resources for addressing gun violence?
So what we did in Department of Probation Adult Services, they're broken down by what they call branches, intense engagement, and various other different components. There was a total of 6. What we did was parse out anyone that's involved in gun violence. They have their own branch. They need a different type of supervision. We want to reduce their gang attendance. Naturally, even with raise the age, we have an increase in our population. We have, what was it, 2,000, I think was the number, for the gun cases?
Yes, 2,000.
2001. I believe approximately 2,100 of the 9,000 individuals under supervision are on for a gun charge. So as a result of such, we took 58 probation officers, 10 supervising officers, and we want to focus on their basic fundamental needs. If they need a high school diploma, if they have family, if they have children, you know, you want some type of leverage you want to speak with them about, and with the hopes of keeping them on the right path, but more importantly, 84% of the adult population are over the age of 24 and are men. And I always say this, I know women need money, we need money too, but men need money. It defines their character, defines who they are, they need employment. So as a result of such, some of them that are undercredited or don't have a high school diploma, we want to work with them to get them, if they have no interest, some people, they don't have an interest in education, but you need to read a seventh grade level or be able to do math to even have a bank account. So we are definitely working with them with these remedial courses, but more importantly, plugging them into these vocational programs so they can have some real significant employment.
As a former former nurse working with people on probation, reentry program, one of the things I heard my colleagues just mention is how people are not objective to the decision when it comes to schools. They don't give them flexibility. I used to have people complain all the time. They cannot go to school because by the time the curfew, they get in. I know it become an individual things, but I would like for you to look into it, because when young folks trying to do the best, we don't want people to use their authority to abuse their authority over people that looking for opportunity.
Right.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, not here. That's not the case. And we even have a high school equivalency that we plugged into one of our neons, as well as tutoring services. So absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Narcisse. Public Advocate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Commissioner. I had a few questions. One, I wanted to go back to the guns conversation. And there was, and I hope you agree with me, there was an exception I wanted to push back on to the framing. I think you said we have to know who the authority figure is. And so I was concerned about assigning that with a gun, because I think that's a different message than what we're trying to tell our young people, and can be misconstrued. Whoever has the bigger gun is what shows who the authority figure is.
No, that was regarding the uniform shirt, the soft shirt, not the gun. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
all right.
just the uniform, not the firearm. Absolutely not the firearm.
Okay. But in that, so this is, I don't want to get into a conversation of who should have a firearm, who shouldn't. But I think something unique happened here. So this was put in 2003, and for whatever reason, it wasn't enforced. So we have two decades of data of what it's like to carry out this job without the firearm. And so have we looked at that data to see if we're able to do it without the firearm before we made the decision to reinforce it?
Right, so I want to clarify, everyone had a firearm. I didn't give them one. It's part of their job. So what was happening was exactly like I said, if they're in a neon and they feel they want to secure their firearm, it was my job to make sure they had a space to secure their firearms while dealing with their clients. They have that space has been provided. I put in cameras over the space. There's an access card to get in, so even clients coming into the facility won't be able to compromise it. It's their discretion to, when they're interacting with a compliant. When they're going out and responding to someone's home, that's a whole different story. And I don't think something should have to happen before we say, oh, well, maybe if they were carrying, when they're going, go ahead.
I think that is a fair point. I'm just saying, I think we had a unique opportunity to have a discussion about something that we otherwise might not have. Because I think the assumption would be that you may need to take a firearm on some of these visits, but we have 2 decades of where that might not have been happening. So that might have been an interesting way to look at whether it is necessary on all of these visits. And so my question is, did we digest any conversation of data to see if that was something that we needed to reinforce?
So yes, data is my life. I did look at data. I don't want it to be where people think for 2 decades they weren't carrying firearms. Several members were and some weren't. That's what it was. But yes, the data.
So that's even better, so we had a control.
Well, I don't think it was a control because God forbid something happened. Now I'm using you as a shield because you got the firearm. So, but my thing is, what happens is that when we took a look at the data, no line of duty deaths. I don't know if that was attributed to not carrying or just them, that just God is good. But with that being said, I know that probation officers have suffered some injuries, but nothing, that I've seen when we looked at the data. And I have members that's been here 30 years, and we probably got over 100 or something years of experience here. And so we haven't seen that. Which is great.
Were officers who weren't carrying it to all the visits complaining?
Yeah. They were? You can speak to that. Okay. Press it, yeah.
Okay. I just want to make some clarifications. It was mandatory back in 2003 where everyone carried a firearm.
Understood.
Then, with the switch of a commissioner, it was people who are in supervision carries a firearm. All other people who are not in the field, they could. It was an optional for them. It was optional for them. However, what the commissioner was talking about is that we have officers who either got injured or for whatever reason their weapon was taken, but they were still in supervision, and they were still going in the field with someone who had a gun, and they didn't have a gun. And
So there was
that
already
became-
a gun present?
Yeah, one, but somebody else didn't have one. And that became an issue for the officers.
So the clarity is, if they're inside and they're dealing with neons, it's optional. When they go out and they're conducting field visits, the supervision operations, they all should be carrying a firearm. Does that make sense? I think maybe the
No.
clarity.
But, my time is on, so I just want to say, I think we're trying to find a world where we can communicate without guns. And if you had asked me in 2003 whether they should or shouldn't, I probably would say they might need it. And what I'm saying is now, for whatever reason, we have 2 decades of where it wasn't mandated, and it seemed to have been, whatever was put in place, whether the supervisors who had it and not everybody, that seemed to be working. I don't want to belabor it here, so maybe that's a conversation to have after. I'm just saying, if it was working, why at this moment would we have to change it? Perhaps having less of a firearm calm the situation to make it go a certain way? I don't know the answer, but I just want to know if there was conversations that have occurred before we made that decision.
Right. So it was conversations, but I think it's confusion. The majority of people in operations had their firearms. Some members may have had their firearm removed for a domestic incident, personal violations or whatever that, against the agency's policy. Those are the individuals that are in operations going out. I think it's about 33 people now. So those were the individuals that we wanted to make sure had their firearms along with the rest of the supervision. Because that supervision was always mandated and always had firearms for the last 21 years. That's what she's saying.
Yes, and some
Yes.
people didn't. And as I understand,
few,
my time,
yeah.
my time is up. So thank you. I look forward to having the conversations. I was going to ask a question. We can ask it later. So maybe I'll just make it a point. I think young people don't like enforcement, and we're usually the ones making the program. So I was just wondering if you are using other people to help design the programs and implement it. And Commissioner Magnelli Liddy, I won't be here for my questions because I have to head out, but I'm looking forward to have a conversation.
Thank you, Public Advocate. And as I mentioned, I think, just having an understanding of are people being injured and do the type of scenarios that they might be injured merit a firearm? And even would a response with a firearm be necessary? I don't want to belabor it because we spent enough time on it, but I have Councilmember Stephen, followed by Hanif, followed by Ressler, followed by Brewer.
Hello, good morning. Well, still morning, I think. I just have a couple of questions, and I guess it's interesting because to just piggyback off where Public Advocate left off, I do want to hear more about how you are incorporating young people into the program model, because I know you mentioned that you're having a new virtual program and those type of things, and I'm a program person, and too often adults are sitting in a room saying, like, this is going to be a great idea, and we know nothing. And so I want to know what that process looks like, what young people you spoke to, do you have an advisory board, how are you getting young people's input and feedback on the program that you're providing? Because I know you were very excited about the virtual program, but how do we know kids are going to like it?
Because that's what we do. We get surveys, right? And we
have
surveys that we created, and we've had these conversations, even for adults, not just young people. It's their decision. Like, we do good at saying, even when I looked at the programs we had in place, who made the decision to have these programs in place? Some of those programs were not offsetting recidivism.
No,
so you are absolutely right. So that's what we do,
So,
not just with the young, but even adults. What type of employment are you interested in? What do you think would help you? So yes, so that's...
I'm just, and I hear you, we're on the same page. I'm a program person, and honestly, I'm only asking about young people. I'm the chair of Children and Youth Services.
Okay, yes, okay.
So that's where I'm going to stay. I'm going
Yes.
to stay in my pocket.
Okay.
So, other than the survey, what does that look like? Because what young people are filling out these surveys, how does it look, and how are they being implemented? Where are you getting these young people from? I would love to hear what that looks like.
So they're part of the juveniles that we have, right? And then we also have young people that are stakeholders in our neons that just live in the community. So even for them...
How many surveys did you get filled out?
I don't know how many surveys she has. I'll get the numbers.
Yes, please
Well,
give me
we
that
don't
number.
have
That would
them,
be
but I'll
great.
get it. But also what we're doing now is we have what's being built out. That's why I have a new chief information officer, right? We know technology is the way to communicate with people. So he's building out something called mobile DOP, where not only just where they can conduct surveys, like how are we doing? I want something to say, how are we doing? Because you're absolutely right. We think we're doing the right thing for them. So for adults and for children. But in addition to that, reminding them, this is your court date, reminding them you're due to come in and see, your counselor, your probation officer, or either we're coming to conduct a home visit today. Don't forget, curfew is this time. We're trying to offset a lot of these nonsense violations, but more so arrests, right? Because we're seeing the recidivism, and it's I'm not going to say it's an increase, it's just always been here. It's just been not really looked at through that particular lens. And you want to reduce recidivism, you want them to have a productive life. So how do we keep them occupied, right? But we also need their buy-in as to what they particularly like. Their, you know, their
Yeah, no, I
particular
agree.
interests.
Like I said, I've been in program. I was in program for 12 years, and I often, coming in this role, there's always a room full of adults making decisions, and I am the person who's always like, well, where are the young people?
That's right.
And so I would love to get the information on like who was surveyed, what that data looks like, because I think those things are important, and making sure that that is happening not just here, but across the board. I'm always asking these questions.
Yes.
And so I'm very.
And we also, you know, like I said, we partnered with NYPD, 2 mentorship programs that I created from way back when, and Girl Talk, and we just had a big event at police headquarters with young ladies from all over. DOE was, you know, Department of Education was a part of it, Probations was a part of it. But what I like about that is that they say kids don't like law enforcement. That program there, they feel so empowered just being in the room. They've gotten awards. They
Well, I
gotta
want to
give
say,
back.
yeah, because I think you said that kids don't like law enforcement, and I think that's a misconception, because it's not that they don't like them. It's often that they have been terrorized them,
Yes.
and we have not done the work to improve those relationships in those communities. And so I think, you know, we shouldn't say that they don't like them. If I've only seen abuse in my communities, and I have not seen you come in and actually try to help me, then I'm going to be standoffish about it. And so I do think that we need to fix the work, and often we're not doing that. We rather play basketball and take pictures and make
Right.
it look nice. But that's you know, that's a whole nother thing. And I had another question, geez, even around the STEPS program. I know you said that there was like no evaluations and like the RFP. That sounds strange to me, because like I said, I was in program for years. I've never seen an RFP has had any indicators of success. Like, there's no way that an RFP was put out. That's just not even how RFPs work.
I'm going to tell you something. I said the same thing. I've been in city government for 30-something years, doing programs myself, right? You want successful outcomes. I walked into this seat, and I'm telling you what I saw was metrics of attendance.
So
and I have a program person, my guy that's over the contracts and they're here. We look, everybody at this table looked at the programs. He did a deep dive in it. I have no reason to tell you.
No,
that's
I'm
the
not
case
saying
if
that
it wasn't.
I'm not saying that, but even a metric of attendance is a metric.
Right.
So to say that there isn't any, that is a metric, and especially for that program specifically, I think what happens in programming, right? We often say like you have to have all these things and we have to have all these things. Sometimes you do need programs that have lower hanging fruits to engage these young people, and so attendance is the prime purpose, right? And so that program was a mentorship program that was in developments that were engaging young people who typically aren't engaged. And it was really hard. And so getting them there was a challenge. And so to get someone who is really hard, that doesn't come to any other programs, that's probably not coming to the community center, that's probably not going to school, and is engaged in other illegal activities, it's really hard to get them there. So that is why that bar was so low, because to engage them took so much work. And so I think we have to also look at the differences. There's different programs for different things, and saying that attendance isn't enough for that program, it made sense because it was so difficult to get those kids there. So maybe you want it a little bit more, but maybe it's like we could have layered it and said, okay, attendance is the first step, something is the second step, and instead of saying let's eliminate it, I think sometimes we don't take the time to say let's stop and evaluate a program and then address it and change it, because it doesn't make sense. It was working in, let's say, even if it was only 200 kids in the program, we just lost those 200 kids because now we have to re-engage them. Even if it's a new program, it's still re-engaging them in a different way. So I'll leave it there. And if there's a second round, maybe I'll ask some more questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Stevens. I wanted to kind of touch on it on a piece while Councilmember Hanif is out. There was some reporting where it was reported that you had directed staff to issue probation violations to people who aren't attending school or working. And this is for youth ages 12 to 17, which drove data up 44% for technical violations. But earlier you had mentioned you're really not trying to do that, and based on what Councilmember Stevens is saying is like we're cutting these programs where, okay, we lost 200 youth or 35 youth, we still lost them. It seems like we're not focused on keeping them engaged and looking at the root cause of why they're not showing up to school or why they're not showing up to work. I understand that some of this has to do with like, well, maybe the type of programming isn't what they wanted, and you're looking to bring in different types of programs from what they've said that they would be interested to, but it seems like these things aren't necessarily in alignment.
I can assure you, I didn't put in, listen, paper's gonna do what they want. I came from PD, so they wanna try and say, oh, she's law enforcement. They have no idea what I did in PD for young people and mentorship. So my thing is, that's not the case. Even if you look at our violations, the highest violation numbers are arrests. That's it. And if there's an increase, then there's an increase in arrests. And if there's an increase in arrests, that tells me we got to do something different as far as programming when it comes to our young people. The next highest thing for violations, and we took a look at it and have the data, failure to appear, which will result in, if we don't see you for a year, 6 months, that can result in a warrant. So I took a look at their data. There is no technical files. I'd rather put a solution in place for school. If you're not attending school, then there's remedial programs. Then there's tutoring. Maybe we can get you up to 7th grade reading and math level and you pass the GED. I'm never gonna violate a child, but papers or
So you're saying
sensationalizing?
you didn't direct people? You didn't direct staff.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Councilmember Ressler.
Great. Thank you for being here today. Commissioner and DOP team, would just like to remind you that you're under oath and the integrity of what is said at these hearings is of utmost importance to the members of this committee and to the public at large. I've been concerned about some of the inconsistencies in the things that I've heard today. I'd like to just start with the reality that the number of kids in jail has doubled under Mayor Adams' tenure. Doubled. And DOP has a central role to play in sending these kids to jail. So after a young person is arrested, they go to DOP for an interview, and then the decision is made to refer the case to the law department for prosecution in family court. DOP is not required to send every case to the law department for prosecution. Why have so many cases, how many cases have been referred to the law department so far in FY24?
Do you have your number, Matt?
So I don't have that number, but it sounds like you're indicating every case is being referred.
No, of course not.
That's clearly not the case, right?
But a lot more are.
A lot more are. We're also seeing a lot more violent felony arrests and felonies.
There's a choice on that. I mean, there's a 44% increase in violent felony arrests that was celebrated in your all's PMMR, but only an 8% increase in gun arrests for those same kids. So you're choosing, the Department of Probation, the law department is choosing to send more kids to jail. That is why these numbers have skyrocketed.
So two responses, right? The first one is there's eligibility and suitability. Some cases are not eligible. But the second thing is the fact that we refer a case to the presentment agency doesn't mean they're going to jail or going to juvenile detention.
Of course not, but we are seeing more and more kids get sent to jail, to juvenile detention, to secure detention. So since you've come into office and brought in a new leadership team at the Department of Probation, and I just have to say, I had a great working relationship with multiple commissioners over multiple administrations, and the senior leadership team at DOP was reform-oriented and thoughtful. I'm very concerned about the change in trajectory that we're seeing under your leadership at the Department of Probation. We've seen cuts of $700,000 to the Impact Program, $2.6 million to Next Steps, $1.6 million to Arches, nearly $5 million in cuts to alternative to incarceration programs under your tenure. Is that correct?
Sounds about right.
Do you know how much we're spending on increased incarceration of kids in jail in our youth secure detention facilities?
No.
It's increased by $20 million, a 50% increase from FY19 to the present. So over these years, we've seen spending increase by 50% in our jails, by $20 million, while we've cut by $5 million the programs that serve to keep people out of jail that are effective alternative to incarceration programs. You said there's no data for the Next Steps program.
Not Next Steps. Next Steps was...
You said there was no data. Is that right?
Next Steps program was community-oriented. Impact program was never off the ground and running. So it served, and it wasn't for youth. You're mentioning juveniles. right? The increase. That program was not for young people. That
Impact would have served 175 young people.
What? That wasn't for young people.
Impact program would have served 175 young people. Are you saying that's not accurate?
Was it for young people? 'Cause
Yes.
I thought it was
Of course
for
it's for
adults.
young people. It's for
Was
young
it for
people.
adults?
Please, could somebody
young people
clarify?
who
It's for
have
young
adult
people. We all know this. Come on. Sorry, I get too upset.
Well, you're saying, with all due respect, counsel, you're saying 175 young people. The program was not running, and what was stated to me, right, coming in the door, I met what's thrown at me, right? What was stated to me by, I believe, the former Deputy Commissioner of Administration was that the providers was delaying the start of the program.
I've spoken with
So-
Cases. Cases was selected as the provider through your RFP process. Is that correct?
I don't know, I wasn't.
Could somebody
I wasn't in
testify?
probation.
Yes? Could
It
we
was
just get-
Cases.
Cases was selected. They were selected to provide a contract for 175 at-risk young people that were in family court. Is that correct? Just yes or no's, please. This is the most basic stuff for programs that you all cut. You should know better. What's the
It
answer?
was correct.
Okay, so I'll take a yes on that one. Cases was ready to provide the services. They have shared that with my office, with Councilmember Stevens' office, I'm sure with Councilmember Nurse's office, with Chair Nurse's office. Why was the program cut? A program that was when youth incarceration rates are skyrocketing. Why would we
Because
eliminate
the
one of the most
program was
effective
cut.
diversion programs in the city of New York?
The program was cut because we were informed that they already had an existing impact program, and that one didn't get up and running.
There is
And
no
that
alternative
existing-
to the impact program. There is nothing like impact that operates in the city of New York.
I mean, I disagree.
Well, you said there's an alternative.
told-
So let's hear from your deputy commissioners. Was there an alternative? What other services are being provided to these young people?
Cases
Because
was
all you are
providing
doing
it.
is sending them to jail.
No.
That is the only policy that we are seeing. That is the outcome we are seeing. The services are being cut, and you're sending more kids to jail. That is what. Tell me. Give me the alternatives that are being provided.
I beg to differ, counsel.
You said that the alternative to next steps was arches. You cut $2.6 million. You testified to that an hour ago.
Are you
cut.
listening?
I'm listening,
It
and
was
I'm
6
listening to your
months-
testimony and the
here's what
inaccuracies
I
you're saying.
testified
Please let
to.
her speak.
Here's what I testified to. When I walked in the door, I was told Arches was 5 days, scaled down to 3 days. I said, why? Because young people weren't compliant with attendance. I said, why? I have to come up with something that's going to bring them in the door. Do you think I'm intentionally cutting programs while still creating programs, while still being concerned? I walked in the door and no one ever had a meeting with DOE about kids coming to us undercredited, no education, not going to school, not listening to their parents. I put that in place, right?
I'd like
'Cause
to
you need
focus
the
on the
base-
questions that
Listen,
I'm
a program is important. School is 10 times more important. But we are definitely putting more programs, the right programs in place.
Okay.
That's what we want for young people.
You testified that you were cutting
So,
next steps because it didn't have data. Former DOP staff
I
had reached out to my
testified
office
that they
to
didn't have
send us all the
successful
indicators.
outcomes. There was no successful
said-
outcomes other than metrics, other than 16 people
Okay.
attending.
If it would be helpful, former
And
DOP
those
staff have
16
sent us.
people weren't the 16 people. So when I say 16 people attending, that means 16 names touched it. The names might have changed. They didn't
I have
complete
witnessed
it.
this program up close. I've met with these providers. This is a highly effective program serving at-risk NYCHA youth. Former
The
DOP staff
providers
have
are still
sent
part
us
of DOP's
metrics and
programs.
outcomes that are, but you cut $2.6 million in funding that we're serving these at-risk youth in our NYCHA developments. And then you testified today that that program was folded in, that you were serving them through Arches. But you cut
That's
Arches
right, we
by
are.
another $1.6
I didn't
million.
cut Arches was not being utilized
Was there not a
because
peg
there
in the
was
budget
no
for $1.6 million
compliance.
cut to Arches?
No.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Was there a peg for 1.6? Yes. Thank you very much. So I just got to remind you, Commissioner, you are under oath.
I
So
am
when you
under oath.
deny the
Right.
things, the facts that are real, it undermines our faith and confidence in you, in this agency, and in this administration.
I'll
I
tell
am
you-
deeply concerned
I'm deeply-
about your
I wanna tell
policies
you,
and the driving
Counselor-
up of mass incarceration of our young people in New York City, and I am
Oh,
deeply
God.
concerned by your testimony today. I will be asking the Office of General Counsel to review its accuracy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, y'all, do the little hand thing. You know the deal. Thank you, Councilmember Ressler. Just for clarifications, Next Steps was terminated,
Next steps was, yes, they weren't renewed. The contract wasn't renewed.
and Impact is fully canceled, never having launched.
Right.
Okay. And what programs are replacing this?
So what we're looking at are real
We have Street
programs to
Smarts.
replace
Is-
that. So currently, we do have cases is still part of the impact that's serving. It says 35 people. I guess that's bare minimum, these RFPs with the numbers, but they serve way more than that. And they serve adults as well. So there is an alternative to Impact, and it's the same vendor cases.
My
that's
understanding was
actually
that
serving them.
Impact was going to offer more service than what the MAP was.
No, it did, they didn't, my staff members here, executive cabinet, they didn't even know about Impact when we brought it up. It's only because I was doing a deep dive into the contracts of Department of Probation that surfaced.
To me, that would seem like there's an issue with a transition plan and some other.
No.
thing.
These are
You should be
members
able to
that-
find where you've had contracts before.
They've been here, and so they've been here for 30-somewhat years.
But in 30 years, you didn't know that the program was there?
You want to speak to?
I'm sorry, in the last few years, you did not know about the program.
I did not know about Impact. What we're saying is, what I've learned since the commissioner came on board is that we had this program Impact. My understanding and my learning was that it never really launched, so I think they got the people in place, but it never went to the next level, and I think the time ended, right? Before knowing should we renew the contract or not. Am I correct?
What happened was it never started. The members,
I understand.
the cabinet members that preceded me for decades didn't even know that this was in place. It only surfaced because I hired him to do a deep dive into all the existing programs. As a result of such, we brought up our contract person who's here, and they said, oh, by the way, this is a contract also. So we said,
No,
well, where did it come
I understand, and because we're now coming back again. I think the takeaway from this exchange is that this program had a lot of potential. There were people in place. There was money ready to go. It would have served more people and had more expansive services than some of what was already in place. And this might be an opportunity to reconsider launching that program.
I'll go back and take a look at it, because maybe it was presented in a different way with the individuals that was here before.
Okay.
I'll definitely take a look at it.
Okay, going to move forward. Councilmember Brewer.
Thank you. I listened earlier, even though I wasn't here, so I just had a couple of questions. What's your program percentage, just generally in terms of your agency? Like, what's the percentage of budget that goes towards program?
What is it, 21 million for programs?
For FY25 is approximately 18.5 million. For FY25, for FY24 was 21.4 million.
21 and 24 and 18 and 25.
21.4 for
Okay.
FY24 and 18.5 for FY25.
Why is it going down?
That's due to the pay?
Due to the PEG?
Yes.
Right, but it's technically, we still have funding. I have intra-city funding that I 6.3 million that I plug right back into that. So we're not losing any money, any funding for programs. I'm not allowing that to happen. There's money there. There's state funding as well.
Okay. Number two, recidivism. What is your recidivism rate? Maybe you did that earlier. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Right, no, we didn't, because, I walked in the door of probation and there was no true source of data. Now we have one.
So what's-
So the recidivism rate for
Maybe for young and for adults?
27%, and I believe adults are 30%.
30%.
29% and 30%.
For adults? Okay. And my question is two other questions. One, I'm a big supporter of the residents of NYCHA, and I feel like NYCHA does not provide programs that would enable people not to end up in your system or anybody else's system. So my question is, what is the percentage, if you know, of your caseload that is a resident of NYCHA? Do you
Right.
have that number?
You went, I thought you had that, NYCHA residents. We'll get it, I'll make sure I get it back to you, because we have looked at that, because I wanted to look at it. I know a lot of the MAP locations have some programs that are going on, and I believe it used
I know
to-
MAP very well.
Right, so it used to be about 16 MAPs, what is it, 30-something now, I think?
MAP has its challenges, however. Okay. Okay, I mean, I know MAP very well. The issue for me is NYCHA needs support. They need their community centers to be open more often. They need, if it's not MAP, something else, et cetera. So I guess my question is, I don't know what your percentage is. I was just wondering what it is for NYCHA, because if it's fairly high, which I assume it is, I don't know that, then why are we not doing more at NYCHA, not so they don't end up in your system? That's my question. Do you
Right.
work with NYCHA to say NYCHA? I scream and yell about this all the
A
time.
lot of our neon centers are right there in those locations. So we have the 7 neon locations open to the community. That's why when Next Steps was canceled, we plugged most of the children right into the arches, which was not being, it didn't have enough clients attending it. So there was plenty of space in arches, which is right there. But most of our 7 neon centers are in those specific areas.
Okay, so I guess I'm asking is maybe not now, but I'd like to get a breakdown.
Yeah, and also, you
So
want
we do have a program right now where our clients are run through a service provider that then provides workforce.
At
labor
NYCHA?
At NYCHA.
Okay, but that's one. You got about
It's a,
400,000 residents or 600,000, depending on who's counting. All right, so you need, what I'm saying is, are you working with NYCHA to see if there are other places where you can provide programs, they can provide programs? I can't get the city administration to say more support for NYCHA.
I will definitely, council member, absolutely look into it and get back to it. And if we're not, we will. But
I'm
absolutely,
sure you're not, that's what I'm sure of.
we'll make sure of it.
Okay. And finally, new needs. What are your new needs?
People.
No, I mean,
So my new
I know-
needs, so
because
my new
OMB
needs is
never
definitely.
wants to hear anybody
If you
with no
look at
needs.
staffing, naturally, I think we're at 423 probation officers. Our peak year was 694 officers for total, and that was in 2019. So we're down to 423, 175 SBOs. We do currently have a class going in the next couple of months. I just submitted to OMB 2 PARs. One, I believe, is for 65 hirings and another for 50, and I'll be submitting more. We need more people. The caseload has increased. You're managing anywhere from 40-plus cases per probation officer. I don't want it to become where it's a check the box referral, check the box. We want real management. You need people, so I definitely need people in order to be effective in that, and more programs. We have a lot of programs that we kind of farm out.
What
You're
would you like to
familiar-
get the recidivism down to? Obviously, 0. But
Yes.
I know, but what do you?
And we finally, I had that put on the PMMR so we can have some real goals to reduce recidivism. Like you said, I would love to have it at 0. I just want to be realistic. Hopefully, we can do a 50% recidivism. But, naturally, that's identifying the client needs. There's a lot of restructuring going on, like I said, with the surveys that get real data. And Councilwoman Stevens, I'll get back to you. But these are things we just implemented. We had to have a different think tank and come to the table. How are we going to keep people out of the criminal
Well,
justice
we all want
system?
that, but we need more
Right.
support for in terms of program in addition to officers.
We do, we
Right.
do, we do.
Thank you, Chair. I could keep going, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brewer. Okay, so we have one more question. You want me to ask? Okay, there was a question from Councilmember Breyu on what is the cost of the Next Steps program? What was the co-
2.5.
2.5 million. Okay. I'm gonna let Councilmember Stevens